I thought the worst betrayal would be learning my son married without me. I was wrong. The real betrayal came when I discovered they had been planning to steal my house and lock me away in a nursing home. When I called Derek to confirm the wedding time, his new wife, Paige, answered with a voice like poisoned honey, "Oh, we already got married yesterday. Only special people were invited." Those words sliced through my heart like broken glass. For 2 years, I had funded their entire existence, paying their rent, buying their groceries, even purchasing Derek's engagement ring. I had spent months helping plan what I thought would be our family's celebration. 4 days later, Paige called in desperation. "The rent is overdue. Did you forget to transfer?" My voice turned arctic. "Didn't I tell you only special people get my money?" My name is Lorna, and at 68 years old, I never imagined I would become the villain in my own son's story. For most of my adult life, I taught 3rd grade at Riverside Elementary in Columbus, Ohio, watching hundreds of children grow and learn. Those little faces filled my days with purpose, but my evenings belonged entirely to Derek. When my husband Frank died in that construction accident 18 years ago, Derek was only 12. The scaffolding collapse that took Frank's life left us both shattered, but I refused to let grief destroy our future. I worked double shifts teaching during the day and tutoring struggling students in the evenings. Every extra dollar went toward Derek's college fund. I wanted him to have opportunities Frank and I never had. Derek graduated from Ohio State with an engineering degree, and my heart swelled with pride as I watched him walk across that stage. Frank would have been so proud, but the job market proved harsh for new graduates. Derek bounced between temporary positions, never quite landing the stable career we had hoped for. Each rejection letter felt like a personal failure, though I never let Derek see my disappointment. 2 years ago, everything changed when Derek brought home Paige. She was 26 with perfectly styled blonde hair and an Instagram account dedicated to lifestyle content. Derek introduced her as an aspiring influencer who was building her personal brand. She had quit her job at a marketing firm to focus on social media full-time, convinced that success was just around the corner. Within weeks, it became clear that Derek and Paige were struggling financially. Their small apartment in the trendy Short North District cost $1,800 a month, far beyond Derek's part-time income. When Derek hesitantly asked if I could help with rent just temporarily, I didn't hesitate. My teacher's pension provided enough for my modest needs, and I had substantial savings from Frank's life insurance. The temporary help became permanent. I covered their rent, their $400 monthly grocery bills, utilities, and Derek's car payment. When Paige mentioned needing dental work, I paid the $3,200 bill without question. Her job interviews required professional clothing, so I funded an $800 shopping trip. When she decided she needed professional photos for her social media presence, I covered the $600 photography session. Derek assured me constantly that Paige was grateful beyond words. "She talks about you all the time, Mom," he would say during our weekly phone calls. "She says you're like the mother she never had. She feels terrible that you're helping so much, but she promises she'll pay you back when her influencer career takes off." These conversations warmed my heart. I had always wanted a daughter, and it seemed like Derek had brought me exactly that. I planned elaborate Sunday dinners, always cooking Paige's favorites: herb-crusted salmon, roasted vegetables, and homemade apple pie. I researched social media marketing to better understand her career aspirations. I even helped her brainstorm content ideas during our family gatherings. But something felt off, though I couldn't pinpoint what. Paige rarely spoke directly to me, always having Derek relay her messages of appreciation. When I offered suggestions for her content, she would smile politely but change the subject. During our Sunday dinners, she spent most of the time on her phone, claiming she was engaging with her followers. The first crack in my faith came during a phone conversation I accidentally overheard. Derek was in my kitchen speaking quietly while Paige was in the bathroom. I was coming down the stairs when I heard him say, "Mom's so gullible. Paige thinks she's a total pushover, but hey, the money keeps coming, so we just play along. As long as we act grateful, she'll keep paying for everything." My legs went weak, and I gripped the banister to steady myself. The words echoed in my mind as I retreated to my bedroom, my heart pounding with a mixture of shock and dawning realization. Had I been nothing more than a convenient ATM to them, were all those expressions of gratitude and familial love nothing but performance? That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction with Derek and Paige. Small details that I had dismissed began forming a disturbing pattern. Paige's reluctance to spend time alone with me, Derek's insistence on handling all communication about money, the way they both seemed eager to leave after our Sunday dinners, claiming they had important plans. I wanted to believe I had misunderstood that my son would never manipulate me so callously. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it would only grow larger in the days to come. After overhearing Derek's cruel assessment of my character, I decided to pay closer attention to the dynamics between us. What I discovered over the following weeks shattered every assumption I had made about my relationship with both Derek and Paige. I began noticing how Paige never thanked me directly for anything. When I paid for her dental work, Derek called to express her gratitude. When I bought her new clothes for job interviews, Derek sent a text saying how touched Paige was by my generosity. Never once did Paige herself acknowledge these gifts or express appreciation in person. During our Sunday dinners, I started observing Paige's behavior more carefully. She would arrive with Derek, offer a brief hug and generic greeting, then immediately retreat to her phone. When I tried to engage her in conversation about her week, her dreams, or her family, she gave short, dismissive answers before returning to her screen. I had attributed this to generational differences, but now I wondered if it was simple disrespect. When Derek mentioned that he and Paige were ready to take the next step in their relationship, I was overjoyed. A wedding meant permanence, family expansion, and the daughter I had always longed for. Derek asked if I would help plan the celebration, and I eagerly agreed. Finally, I thought here was my chance to truly bond with Paige. Our first planning meeting took place at a trendy coffee shop in German Village. I arrived armed with wedding magazines, a notebook full of ideas, and unbridled enthusiasm. Paige arrived 20 minutes late, sliding into the booth across from me with barely an apology. "So," she said, scrolling through her phone, "Derek said you wanted to help with wedding stuff." I opened my notebook, excited to share the research I had done. I found some beautiful venues that would be perfect for a spring ceremony. There's this lovely garden space that... Whatever, Paige interrupted, not looking up from her screen. "You can handle all the boring details. Flowers, catering, decorations, that kind of thing. I'll focus on the important stuff like my dress and the guest list." Her dismissive tone stung, but I told myself she was probably overwhelmed with wedding planning stress. I threw myself into the preparations with renewed energy, determined to create the perfect celebration for my son and future daughter-in-law. Over the next month, I paid deposits totaling $8,000. The venue required a $3,000 deposit, the caterer wanted $2,500 up front, and the florist needed $1,500 to secure the date. The photographer required a $1,000 retainer. Each payment felt like an investment in our family's future happiness. I also wanted to give Paige something meaningful for the ceremony, so I retrieved my grandmother's pearl necklace from my jewelry box. The piece was worth approximately $2,400 and had been in our family for 3 generations. When I presented it to Paige during one of our Sunday dinners, her eyes lit up for the first time since I had known her. "It's gorgeous," she said, actually making eye contact with me. "I love vintage jewelry." Derek beamed, clearly pleased that his mother and fiancé were finally connecting. For a moment, I felt hopeful that we were turning a corner in our relationship. That hope was short-lived. Derek called the next week asking for an additional $5,000 for their honeymoon. "Paige has been working so hard on her social media career," he explained. "She deserves something special, somewhere tropical where she can create amazing content. This could really boost her follower count." The request gave me pause. $5,000 was a substantial amount even for me, but Derek sounded so earnest, so devoted to making Paige happy. I found myself at the bank that afternoon liquidating part of my retirement savings to transfer the money into Derek's account. As the wedding date approached, my unease grew stronger. Something about the entire situation felt wrong, though I couldn't articulate what bothered me. Derek and Paige seemed secretive about certain aspects of the planning, claiming they wanted to surprise me with special details. Paige had become even more distant, often canceling our planning meetings at the last minute. Driven by a combination of curiosity and growing suspicion, I decided to create a fake social media account to follow Paige's online activity. What I discovered there horrified me beyond anything I could have imagined. Paige's recent posts included photos of herself with captions mocking desperate older women who try to buy love from their adult children. She posted pictures of expensive gifts with comments about having terrible taste and old lady style. Most devastating of all, she had posted photos of items I had bought her, items she was selling online for cash. The pearl necklace I had given her, my family's treasured heirloom, was listed on a resale website for $1,800. The professional clothing I had purchased for her job interviews was being sold piece by piece. Even small gifts I had given her, things I thought she might treasure, were being converted to money. But the worst discovery came when I found one of her live streams from the previous week. Paige was answering questions from her followers about her upcoming wedding when someone asked about her relationship with Derek's family. "Oh God," Paige laughed, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Derek's mom is like this pathetic old lady who pays for everything because she's so lonely and desperate for attention. She thinks she's buying herself a daughter, which is honestly kind of sad. But hey, free money is free money, right? Derek and I just play along because it makes our lives so much easier." The comments from her followers were equally cruel, with people suggesting ways to extract even more money from the lonely old lady. Paige responded with laughing emojis and promises to keep everyone updated on her money train situation. I sat in my living room staring at my computer screen in complete shock. The person I thought I was gaining as a daughter had been publicly humiliating me to strangers on the internet. Every kindness I had shown, every gesture of love and support, had been twisted into evidence of my desperation and foolishness. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was done being the naive, generous mother who could be exploited without consequence. It was time to find out exactly how deep this betrayal went and what Derek and Paige were really planning for our family's future. The discovery of Paige's online mockery ignited something fierce within me, but I knew that emotional reactions would only play into their narrative of me being an unstable older woman. Instead, I decided to gather concrete evidence of their deception before taking any action. I downloaded a voice recording app on my phone and began documenting every conversation with Derek and Paige. I photographed every check I wrote, every bank transfer I made, and every receipt for expenses I covered on their behalf. If they wanted to play games with my generosity, I would make sure I had a complete record of their manipulation. 2 weeks before what I thought was Derek's wedding date, I offered to pay for Paige's final dress alterations. She had been complaining that the gown needed adjustments, and I wanted to ensure everything was perfect for what I still believed would be our family's special day. "You don't have to do that," Paige said when I made the offer, though her tone suggested she expected exactly that level of financial support. "I insist," I replied, maintaining the cheerful, accommodating persona they clearly expected from me. "It's my gift to you. I want you to feel absolutely beautiful on your wedding day." The next afternoon, I accompanied Paige to Marianne's Bridal Alterations, a small shop in Upper Arlington that specialized in custom fittings. While Paige was in the changing room, I chatted with Marianne, the shop's elderly owner. "Such a lovely bride," I commented, hoping to learn more about Paige's visits to the shop. Marianne smiled warmly. "Oh yes, though I was surprised when she came in last week, requesting such a rush job. Usually brides don't need their dresses altered again just days after a ceremony, but she insisted she needed this one ready immediately." My blood turned to ice. "I'm sorry, what do you mean after a ceremony?" Marianne looked confused by my reaction. "Well, she mentioned she had just gotten married and needed this dress altered for another celebration. I assumed it was for a reception or second ceremony. She seemed quite rushed about the whole thing." I forced myself to maintain a calm expression while my world tilted on its axis. "Oh yes, of course. I must have misunderstood the timing. As Paige emerged from the changing room in the wedding dress I had helped her choose months earlier, I studied her face carefully. She showed no signs of guilt or nervousness, chatting casually about minor adjustments, while I processed the devastating realization that they had already held a secret ceremony. Over the next few days, I struggled with the knowledge that Derek and Paige had excluded me from what should have been one of the most important moments of our family's life. But I forced myself to remain silent, sensing that confronting them directly would only result in denials and further manipulation. Instead, I decided to hire professional help to uncover the full scope of their deception. Brad Thompson was a private investigator recommended by my neighbor's attorney. He was a former police detective in his 50s, with graying hair and kind eyes that conveyed both competence and discretion. When I explained my situation, he listened without judgment, taking careful notes about the timeline of events and my specific concerns. "I need to know what they're really planning," I told him during our initial meeting at his downtown office. "This goes beyond just excluding me from a wedding. There's something else happening here, something that makes me feel like I'm in danger." Brad's investigation began immediately. Within 48 hours, he had confirmed my worst fears and uncovered details that exceeded my most paranoid suspicions. "I have difficult news," Brad said when he called 3 days later. "Derek and Paige applied for a marriage license 3 weeks ago. Public records show they were married in a small courthouse ceremony last Tuesday, followed by a reception at the Hilton downtown. The reception alone cost approximately $7,000. My hands trembled as I processed this information. They had planned their secret wedding while I was helping arrange what I thought was their upcoming ceremony. Every conversation about flowers, catering, and guest lists had been an elaborate charade designed to keep me distracted and compliant. But Brad had more devastating news to share. "There are other issues we need to discuss. I've been monitoring their activities as you requested, and I've discovered some concerning patterns." He arranged to meet me at a quiet restaurant in Worthington where he presented me with a manila folder containing photographs, documents, and surveillance reports that painted a picture of betrayal more complete than I had imagined possible. The first shock was photographic evidence of Paige's ongoing affair with Derek's best friend, Marcus. Brad had captured multiple images of Paige and Marcus entering and leaving a hotel together, embracing in Marcus's car, and sharing intimate dinners while Derek was supposedly at work. "The more surprising discovery," Brad continued, "is that Derek knows about the affair and doesn't seem bothered by it. He showed me transcripts of phone conversations he had recorded between Derek and Marcus, where Derek actually encouraged the relationship. 'Keep her happy,' Derek had said in one conversation. 'We need her focused on the long-term plan, not getting bored and looking for new entertainment.' The long-term plan, as Brad explained it, involved using Marcus as an additional source of income. Marcus worked in real estate and had been providing Derek and Paige with cash payments in exchange for Paige's companionship. The three of them had essentially formed a conspiracy to extract money from multiple sources while planning something much more sinister. The final and most devastating discovery came in the form of bank statements that Brad had obtained through his contacts in the financial industry. Derek had been forging my signature to access my accounts, stealing an additional $12,000 beyond what I had willingly given them. The signature analysis shows clear attempts to mimic your handwriting, Brad explained, pointing to specific examples on withdrawal slips and transfer forms. This constitutes multiple felonies, including elder abuse and financial fraud. As I stared at the evidence of my son's criminal behavior, I felt a crushing combination of betrayal, anger, and heartbreak. The child I had sacrificed everything to raise the young man I had supported through every challenge and disappointment had been systematically stealing from me while planning even worse violations of my trust. But Brad saved the most shocking revelation for last, pulling out a final set of documents that made my blood run cold. "There's one more thing you need to see," he said grimly. "This might be the most important discovery of all." The documents Brad placed before me looked like official legal paperwork, but the content seemed too outrageous to be real. I read through them twice before the full implications sank in, and when they did, I felt physically sick. Derek and Paige had been consulting with an attorney about having me declared mentally incompetent. These are preliminary documents. Brad explained, his voice gentle but serious. They've been building a case that you're suffering from dementia or other cognitive decline that makes you unable to manage your own affairs. The paperwork included a detailed plan for gaining power of attorney over my finances and property. My house, worth $340,000 according to recent assessments, would be sold to cover what they claimed were my mounting medical expenses. My remaining retirement funds, totaling approximately $180,000, would be transferred to accounts they controlled. But the most horrifying aspect of their plan involved my physical well-being. They had researched several nursing homes in the Columbus area, specifically looking for facilities that specialized in memory care for patients with limited family involvement. The goal was to have me declared incompetent, seize control of my assets, and then place me in institutional care against my will. They've been documenting what they claim are signs of your mental decline. Brad continued, showing me printouts of text messages between Derek and Paige. They're creating a narrative that you're becoming confused about money, making poor decisions, and potentially dangerous to yourself. Reading their messages felt like being stabbed repeatedly in the heart. Derek had texted Paige, "Mom seemed confused about the wedding costs today. She asked the same question twice. Perfect evidence for the competency hearing." Paige had responded, "Keep pushing her to make larger financial decisions. The more erratic her spending seems, the stronger our case becomes." Every generous gesture I had made every time I had trusted them with substantial amounts of money had been twisted into evidence of mental instability. They were using my love for them as a weapon against me building a legal case that would strip away my freedom and dignity. The timeline they had developed was frighteningly detailed. They planned to file for emergency guardianship immediately after their secret wedding, claiming that my mental state had deteriorated rapidly and required immediate intervention. The wedding I thought I was helping to plan was actually intended as their celebration party after successfully seizing control of my life. Brad had also uncovered the involvement of Derek's father's relatives, people who had never shown any interest in Derek's well-being while he was growing up. Frank's brother, Robert, had suddenly reappeared in Derek's life 6 months ago, offering advice about dealing with aging parents and connecting Derek with a lawyer who specialized in elder guardianship cases. Robert stands to benefit financially from this arrangement, Brad explained. If Derek gains control of your assets, Robert will receive a percentage as a consultant fee. He's been coaching Derek on how to document evidence of your mental decline and navigate the legal system. The betrayal felt infinite, expanding beyond Derek and Paige to include people I had barely thought about in years. Frank's family had ignored us completely after his death, never offering support or maintaining contact with Derek during his most difficult years. Now they were circling like vultures, eager to profit from the destruction of my independence and dignity. As I sat in that restaurant surrounded by evidence of the conspiracy against me, I felt a grief deeper than anything I had experienced since Frank's death. The son I had raised and loved unconditionally had become a stranger willing to steal not just my money, but my freedom, my home, and my future. But alongside the grief, I felt something else rising within me, a cold, calculating anger that burned away my tears and sharpened my focus. Derek and Paige had made a critical mistake in their planning. They had assumed I was exactly what Paige had called me online, a lonely, desperate old woman who could be easily manipulated and discarded. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The day Derek called to inform me about his wedding had already happened. I was ready for him. When Paige answered his phone with that poisonous sweetness, announcing that only special people had been invited to their ceremony, I remained calm and collected. "Oh, how wonderful," I said, my voice perfectly controlled. "I'm so happy for you both." "We're sorry we couldn't include everyone," Paige continued, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "But it was such a small, intimate celebration. just our closest friends and the people who really matter to us. Each word was designed to hurt me to reinforce my exclusion and irrelevance in their lives. But instead of crying or begging for explanation, I simply wished them well and ended the call. 4 days later, right on schedule, Paige called in a panic about their overdue rent. "The landlord is threatening eviction," she said, her voice high with anxiety. "Did you forget to transfer our rent money? It's usually in Derek's account by now." This was the moment I had been preparing for the first test of my newfound resolve. My voice was ice cold as I delivered my response. "Didn't I tell you only special people get my money?" The silence that followed was profound. Paige clearly had not expected this reaction, had not prepared for the possibility that their cruelty might have consequences. "I don't understand," she finally stammered. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what you told me about your wedding," I replied calmly. "Only special people are included. Since I wasn't special enough for your celebration, I assume I'm not special enough to pay your bills either." I hung up before she could respond, feeling a satisfaction I hadn't experienced in months. The game had changed, and Derek and Paige had no idea what they were really facing. Within hours, Derek called, his voice furious and demanding. "What the hell is wrong with you, Mom? Paige said you're refusing to pay our rent. Are you having some kind of mental breakdown?" "Not at all, sweetheart," I said, maintaining my calm tone. "I just thought that since you're married now, you'd want to be independent. Isn't that what adults do?" "You can't just cut us off without warning," Derek snapped. "We have responsibilities, commitments. You know we're depending on your help." "The way I depended on being included in my only son's wedding?" I asked quietly. Derek's tone shifted, becoming manipulative and guilt-inducing. "Mom, we've explained this. It was a small ceremony, very last minute. We're planning a bigger celebration later where you'll be included. Don't you want us to be happy?" But I was done being manipulated by declarations of love that came only when they needed money. "Of course I want you to be happy, Derek. I want you to experience the joy of complete independence and self-reliance. Consider this my wedding gift to you both." After hanging up, I sat in my living room feeling more clear-headed than I had in months. Derek and Paige had revealed their true feelings about me, had shown me exactly how little I meant to them beyond my financial utility. Now it was time for them to learn what life looked like without their personal ATM. But cutting off their money was only the beginning of my plan. I had much more devastating consequences in store for them, and they had no idea what was coming. In the weeks following my decision to cut off Derek and Paige's financial support, I maintained a carefully crafted facade of confused elderly woman, while systematically dismantling the life they had built on my stolen money. Every interaction with them was now a performance designed to gather evidence and prepare for their ultimate downfall. Derek and Paige's desperation became apparent immediately. They began visiting me daily, something they had rarely done before the money stopped flowing. These visits followed a predictable pattern. They would arrive with expressions of concern, ask probing questions about my well-being and mental state, and eventually steer the conversation toward their financial difficulties. "We're just worried about you, Mom," Derek would say, his voice dripping with false concern. "You seem confused lately, making decisions that don't make sense. Cutting off our support so suddenly, it's not like you." Paige would nod sympathetically, playing the role of devoted daughter-in-law. "We love you so much, and we want to make sure you're taking care of yourself. Sometimes older people need help managing their finances. There's no shame in that." These conversations were carefully choreographed attempts to establish a record of my mental decline, but I was recording every word. My phone, equipped with Brad's recommended recording app, captured their efforts to gaslight me into believing I was becoming incompetent. During one particularly manipulative visit, Derek brought printed articles about dementia and age-related cognitive decline. "I found these online," he said, spreading them across my coffee table. "Some of the symptoms sound familiar based on your recent behavior." He proceeded to read excerpts about confusion with money management, difficulty making decisions, and changes in judgment or reasoning. Each symptom he highlighted was clearly intended to describe my recent financial choices, building a case that I was no longer capable of handling my own affairs. "Maybe you should see a doctor," Paige suggested gently, "just for a checkup to make sure everything's okay upstairs." I played my role perfectly, appearing slightly flustered and defensive. "I'm fine," I insisted, allowing a tremor of uncertainty into my voice. "I just think it's time for you two to be more independent." But privately, I was 3 steps ahead of their scheme. While they were documenting my supposed mental decline, I was building an ironclad case against them with the help of professionals who specialized in exactly the crimes they were committing. My first priority was securing my assets from their continued theft. I quietly transferred all my money to a new bank account at a different institution, one they knew nothing about. I changed all my passwords, updated my emergency contacts, and removed Derek from any accounts where he had previously been listed as a beneficiary or authorized user. Next, I contacted my attorney, Eleanor Walsh, a sharp woman in her 70s who specialized in estate planning and elder law. Eleanor had handled Frank's estate after his death and had always impressed me with her thoroughness and integrity. "Lorna," she said when I called to request an urgent meeting, "I haven't heard from you in years. I hope everything is all right." "Actually, everything is very wrong," I replied. "I need to change my will immediately, and I may need help pursuing criminal charges against my son." Eleanor's office was in a converted Victorian house in German Village, filled with law books and family photos that created an atmosphere of warmth and competence. When I presented her with Brad's evidence of Derek's forgery and theft, her expression grew increasingly grave. "This is extensive financial abuse," she said, reviewing the bank statements and signature analyses. "The forged signatures alone constitute multiple felonies. Combined with the pattern of manipulation and their plans for guardianship, this could result in serious prison time." We spent the afternoon updating my will, removing Derek entirely, and establishing a trust that would donate my assets to literacy charities after my death. Eleanor also helped me file reports with Adult Protective Services and the Ohio Attorney General's office, creating an official record of the financial abuse I had suffered. "The most important thing now," Eleanor explained, "is documenting their ongoing attempts to manipulate you. Keep recording their visits, save any text messages or emails, and let them continue building their case for your incompetence. The more evidence they create of their conspiracy, the stronger our criminal case becomes." Meanwhile, Derek and Paige's financial situation was deteriorating rapidly. Without my support, they couldn't afford their expensive apartment, their car payments, or even basic groceries. I watched from my window as Derek's car was repossessed on a Tuesday afternoon, the tow truck driver ignoring Derek's angry protests about missed payments. Paige's social media presence also began crumbling. Without money for professional photography, designer clothes, or exotic locations, her content became increasingly desperate and low quality. Her follower count started declining as her posts shifted from lifestyle inspiration to barely concealed pleas for financial support. But the most satisfying development was watching their relationship deteriorate under financial pressure. Derek and Paige had never built a partnership based on genuine love or mutual respect. Their connection was purely transactional, built around shared greed and exploitation of others. When the money disappeared, so did any pretense of affection between them. I observed their arguments during visits, noting how quickly their facade of marital bliss cracked when they thought I wasn't paying attention. Derek blamed Paige for alienating me with her attitude. Paige accused Derek of being weak and ineffective in managing his mother. Both of them seemed shocked that their manipulation tactics weren't working on me anymore. The pressure intensified when their landlord began eviction proceedings. Derek arrived at my house one evening visibly drunk and more desperate than I had ever seen him. "Mom, please," he begged, his usual manipulation replaced by raw panic. "We're going to be homeless. Paige is talking about leaving me. Everything is falling apart." For a moment, I felt a flicker of the maternal instinct that had driven me to support him for so long. This was my child, the baby I had rocked through countless sleepless nights, the little boy who had crawled into my bed after nightmares. But then I remembered the recordings of his laughter as he called me gullible. the forged signatures on my bank accounts, and the detailed plans to steal my freedom and dignity. "I'm sorry you're struggling, Derek," I said calmly, "but you're a married man now. These are problems you and your wife need to solve together." "But you're my mother," he said, his voice breaking. "Mothers don't abandon their children." The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. "You're absolutely right," I agreed. "Mothers don't abandon their children. Children, however, sometimes abandon their mothers. They exclude them from important events, steal from them, and plot to have them declared incompetent. But you wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Derek's face went pale, and I saw the first glimmer of realization that I might know more about his plans than he had assumed. But his desperation overcame his caution. "I don't know what you think you know," he said carefully, "but Paige and I have only ever wanted to help you. We've been worried about your memory, your decision-making. Maybe we need to talk to a professional about getting you some help." This was exactly what I'd been waiting for. Derek was finally moving forward with the competency evaluation phase of their plan, and I was ready for him. "What kind of help?" I asked, feigning confusion and concern. "Just a doctor's visit." Derek said, his voice becoming soothing and manipulative again. "Someone who specializes in helping older adults with memory problems. Dr. Hamilton is an expert in these things, and he's agreed to see you next week." Dr. Hamilton, I knew from Brad's research, was a physician who had been paid to provide false medical evaluations supporting guardianship cases. His medical license was already under investigation for similar fraud, but Derek and Paige were unaware of this development. "That sounds like a good idea," I said, allowing relief to creep into my voice. "I have been feeling confused lately. Maybe professional help is exactly what I need." Derek's smile was the most genuine expression I had seen from him in months, though it was rooted in his belief that victory was within reach. He had no idea that Dr. Hamilton was already cooperating with authorities in exchange for leniency in his own case, and that our upcoming meeting would be monitored by both Adult Protective Services and the FBI. "Everything's going to be fine, Mom," Derek said, patting my hand with what he probably thought was comforting affection. "We'll take good care of you." As I watched him leave that evening, I felt a profound sadness for the relationship we had lost and the man he had become. But I also felt a fierce satisfaction knowing that justice was finally within reach. Derek and Paige had crafted their trap carefully, but they had forgotten one crucial detail. The woman they were trying to destroy was far from helpless, and she had been preparing her own trap all along. The morning of my scheduled evaluation with Dr. Hamilton, I dressed carefully in my most conservative outfit, a navy blue dress that made me look properly matronly sensible shoes, and minimal jewelry. I wanted to appear exactly like the confused elderly woman Derek and Paige expected right up until the moment I revealed how thoroughly I had outmaneuvered them. Derek arrived precisely at 9 o'clock, accompanied by Paige and a man I didn't recognize. Derek introduced him as his uncle, Robert Frank's brother, who had magically reappeared in our lives just as Derek began planning to steal my assets. Robert was a thin man in his 60s with calculating eyes and a practiced smile that never reached his face. "It's so good to finally meet you properly, Lorna," Robert said, grasping my hand with both of his in a gesture clearly meant to convey warmth and familial affection. "Derek has told me so much about you. I'm sorry we haven't stayed in touch since Frank passed." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Robert had never once reached out to check on Derek during his childhood, had never sent a birthday card or holiday greeting, had essentially acted as though we didn't exist until he smelled an opportunity for financial gain. But I smiled pleasantly and thanked him for coming, playing the role of grateful, slightly overwhelmed elderly relative. Dr. Hamilton arrived shortly after 10 o'clock carrying an expensive leather briefcase that probably contained the fraudulent evaluation forms he planned to use in declaring me mentally incompetent. He was younger than I had expected, perhaps in his late 40s, with prematurely gray hair and the smooth demeanor of someone accustomed to manipulating vulnerable people. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, settling into my living room armchair as though he owned the place. I understand you've been experiencing some confusion lately. Memory problems, difficulty with decision-making, that sort of thing. It wasn't a question. It was a statement designed to establish the narrative Derek had already provided. Dr. Hamilton had clearly been briefed on exactly what diagnosis he was expected to deliver. "Well, I don't know," I replied, allowing my voice to sound uncertain and slightly anxious. "My son thinks I might be having problems, but I feel fine most of the time." Derek jumped in immediately, his voice filled with practiced concern. "Mom, remember how confused you were about the wedding expenses and cutting off our support so suddenly? That wasn't like you at all." Paige nodded sympathetically, though I could see the greed shining in her eyes as she imagined gaining control of my assets. "We're just worried about you. We want to make sure you get the help you need." Dr. Hamilton began asking me questions clearly designed to make me appear mentally unstable. He inquired about my daily routines, my memory of recent events, and my understanding of financial matters. Each question was phrased in a way that would make normal responses seem confused or inadequate. "Do you remember what you had for breakfast this morning?" he asked, pen poised over what looked like an official evaluation form. "I think it was oatmeal," I replied hesitantly, though I remembered perfectly that I had eaten scrambled eggs with toast. "You think," Dr. Hamilton pressed, making notes, "are you often uncertain about recent meals?" "Sometimes," I admitted, playing into their narrative while secretly recording every word of this fraudulent evaluation. The questioning continued for nearly an hour, with Derek and Paige occasionally adding comments about my supposed confusion and forgetfulness. Robert sat quietly, but I could see him taking notes, probably documenting evidence he could later use to support their guardianship petition. Finally, Dr. Hamilton pulled out a stack of papers from his briefcase. "Based on my preliminary assessment," he announced with false gravity, "I believe Mrs. Patterson is experiencing significant cognitive decline that impairs her ability to make sound financial decisions." Derek's expression of relief was obvious. He thought victory was within his grasp. Paige actually smiled, probably calculating how quickly they could access my bank accounts once the papers were signed. "The next step," Dr. Hamilton continued, "is establishing a legal guardianship arrangement to protect Mrs. Patterson's interests. I've prepared some preliminary paperwork that will transfer financial authority to her son and allow us to ensure her assets are properly managed." This was the moment I had been waiting for. As Dr. Hamilton spread the guardianship documents across my coffee table and Derek reached for a pen to help me sign them, I allowed my confused elderly woman facade to slip away completely. "Actually," I said, my voice suddenly clear and strong, "before we sign anything, I have something to share with all of you." The change in my demeanor was so dramatic that everyone in the room froze. Derek looked confused, Paige seemed alarmed, and Dr. Hamilton appeared genuinely startled by my transformation. I reached for my phone and held it up so everyone could see the recording app that had been running throughout the entire conversation. "I've been recording everything," I announced calmly. "Every word of this fraudulent evaluation, every detail of your conspiracy to steal my assets, every attempt to manipulate me into believing I'm mentally incompetent." The silence that followed was deafening. Derek's mouth fell open in shock. Paige went pale, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. Robert began calculating escape routes, and Dr. Hamilton looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. "I know about the secret wedding." I continued, my voice growing stronger with each revelation. "I know about the forged signatures on my bank accounts. I know about your plan to have me declared incompetent and placed in a nursing home against my will. I know about Paige's affair with Marcus and your three-way conspiracy to defraud multiple people." Derek found his voice first, though it came out as a strangled whisper. "Mom, what are you talking about? We're trying to help you." "No, Derek," I replied firmly. "You're trying to destroy me. But here's what you don't know. I've been working with the FBI for 2 weeks. I've documented $47,000 in theft and fraud. Adult Protective Services has been investigating your forced competency evaluation, and this entire conversation has been monitored by federal agents." Dr. Hamilton jumped to his feet, clearly desperate to escape before law enforcement arrived. "I need to leave," he said, grabbing for his briefcase. "This is obviously a misunderstanding." "Actually, Dr. Hamilton," I said, still speaking calmly, "you're not going anywhere." Just as Derek lunged toward me, probably intending to grab my phone and destroy the evidence, my front door opened, and 3 FBI agents walked into my living room. Agent Sarah Martinez, whom I had been working with for the past 2 weeks, held up her badge and surveyed the room with professional authority. Derek Patterson, Paige Patterson, Robert Patterson, and Dr. Hamilton. She announced, "You're all under arrest for conspiracy to commit elder abuse, financial fraud, and attempted illegal guardianship." The chaos that followed was both satisfying and heartbreaking. Derek screamed accusations at me, calling me vindictive and claiming I was destroying the family. Paige burst into tears, begging for mercy and claiming she had been manipulated by Derek. Robert tried to deny any involvement in the conspiracy. Dr. Hamilton demanded to speak with his attorney. But the evidence was overwhelming. Agent Martinez had recordings of their conversations, bank records, showing the forged signatures, documentation of their secret wedding, funded by my stolen money, and testimony from multiple witnesses about their conspiracy to have me declared mentally incompetent. As they were led away in handcuffs, Derek turned back to look at me one final time. The anger in his eyes had been replaced by something that might have been regret, but it was far too late for apologies or second thoughts. "I raised you better than this," I said quietly as the agents escorted him past me. "I loved you more than my own life, and you chose to repay that love with betrayal and theft." Derek opened his mouth as though he wanted to respond, but Agent Martinez guided him toward the door before he could speak. I watched through my front window as the 4 conspirators were placed in separate police vehicles, their carefully crafted plan collapsing into complete and utter ruin. For the first time in months, I was alone in my house, surrounded by silence instead of manipulation and lies. The relief was profound, but so was the grief. I had lost my son not to death or distance, but to greed and moral bankruptcy. That loss would stay with me forever, but I had gained something precious in return: my freedom, my dignity, and the satisfaction of proving that this old woman was far from helpless. The legal proceedings that followed were swift and decisive, though watching my son face the consequences of his choices brought me no joy. Derek was charged with elder abuse, financial fraud, forgery, and conspiracy, facing a potential sentence of 8 to 12 years in federal prison. Paige received charges of conspiracy and fraud, with a potential 5 to 7-year sentence. Dr. Hamilton's medical license was permanently revoked, and he faced additional insurance fraud charges that would likely result in significant prison time. Robert was charged with conspiracy to commit elder abuse, and Marcus, when investigators tracked him down, faced money laundering charges for helping Derek and Paige hide their stolen funds. The trial revealed details that were both horrifying and vindicating. Derek's attorney tried to argue that his client was motivated by genuine concern for my well-being, but the evidence of systematic theft and manipulation was overwhelming. The recordings I had made demonstrated clearly that their competency evaluation was fraudulent, designed solely to gain control of my assets. Paige's testimony was particularly damning for Derek. Under pressure from prosecutors, she revealed the full scope of their conspiracy, including their plans to sell my house and place me in the cheapest available nursing home, while they used my money to fund an extravagant lifestyle. Her affair with Marcus was revealed to be part of a broader scheme to extract money from multiple sources, while Derek focused on manipulating me. The most devastating moment came when prosecutors played audio recordings of Derek and Paige laughing about my supposed mental decline. Hearing my son's voice as he mocked my confusion and celebrated their successful manipulation felt like losing him all over again. But it also reinforced my certainty that pursuing justice had been the right choice. The financial recovery was substantial. All of my stolen money was returned through asset seizure, including funds Derek and Paige had spent on their secret wedding, their expensive lifestyle, and Paige's failed social media ventures. The court ordered them to pay additional restitution for emotional damages and legal expenses. My house and remaining savings were secured through legal protections that prevented any future attempts at financial manipulation. Eleanor helped me establish a trust that would protect my assets and ensure they would eventually benefit literacy charities, fulfilling my desire to help children learn and grow. But the most significant change in my life wasn't financial, it was emotional and spiritual. The betrayal had forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about my relationship with Derek and my own patterns of giving love through money, rather than requiring genuine respect and appreciation. 6 months after the trial ended, I made the decision to sell my house and move to a senior living community in Sarasota, Florida. The decision wasn't motivated by loneliness or inability to care for myself, but by a desire to start fresh in a place untainted by memories of manipulation and betrayal. Sunset Gardens was a vibrant community where residents maintained independent apartments while enjoying social activities, educational programs, and volunteer opportunities. For the first time in years, I found myself surrounded by people who valued my intelligence, my experiences, and my companionship without any expectation of financial benefit. I began volunteering with the local literacy council, teaching reading to adults who had never learned these essential skills. Working with these eager students reminded me why I had loved teaching so much, and their genuine gratitude for my help stood in stark contrast to Derek and Paige's manufactured appreciation. My story had gained local media attention during the trial, and the coverage led to speaking opportunities where I could warn other older adults about the signs of financial abuse and manipulation. Each presentation was emotionally difficult, but knowing that my experience might protect other families made the pain worthwhile. The most unexpected development in my new life came when I met Harold Winters at a community book club meeting. Harold was a retired librarian whose wife had passed away 3 years earlier. He was intelligent, kind, and refreshingly direct in his communication. Our friendship developed slowly, built on shared interests and genuine compatibility rather than financial need or family obligation. Harold appreciated my strength and independence qualities that Derek and Paige had tried to destroy. With Harold, I could discuss literature, politics, and current events without worrying that my opinions were being cataloged as evidence of mental decline. He valued my intelligence rather than trying to exploit my generosity. Our relationship remained appropriately slow and respectful, but for the first time since Frank's death, I felt hopeful about the possibility of romantic companionship based on mutual respect and affection. Derek wrote to me from prison 6 months into his sentence. The letter was filled with apologies and claims that he finally understood the magnitude of his betrayal. He begged for forgiveness and promised to spend the rest of his life making amends for his crimes against me. I read the letter several times, searching for signs of genuine remorse versus continued manipulation. While Derek's words sounded sincere, I had learned too much about his capacity for deception to trust anything he said. More importantly, I had learned that forgiveness didn't require restoring a relationship that had been built on exploitation and disrespect. I wrote back once a brief letter explaining that, while I hoped he would find genuine redemption during his incarceration, I could not welcome him back into my life. The damage he had caused was too extensive, and my own peace and safety required maintaining distance from people who had proven capable of such systematic betrayal. Paige never attempted to contact me, which I considered a blessing. Her social media presence had completely collapsed, and according to news reports, she was serving her sentence while facing additional charges related to other fraudulent schemes she had operated before meeting Derek. As I write this story now, 2 years have passed since that devastating phone call about their secret wedding. I'm 70 years old, living independently in a beautiful apartment overlooking the Gulf of Mexico. I have friends who appreciate my company volunteer work that gives my life meaning, and a romantic relationship built on genuine affection rather than financial utility. The deeper lesson I learned from this experience goes beyond the obvious warnings about financial abuse and manipulation. I realized that I had been trying to purchase love and acceptance through money, rather than requiring the people in my life to demonstrate genuine care through their actions and treatment of me. For years, I had convinced myself that Derek's dependence on my financial support was a sign of our close relationship. In reality, it was preventing him from developing independence and maturity while enabling his worst impulses. My generosity had become enabling, and my desire to be needed had made me vulnerable to exploitation. The most profound change in my life has been learning to value relationships where my presence is the gift, not my wallet. Harold appreciates my stories, my wisdom, and my company. My fellow volunteers value my experience and dedication. My new friends enjoy my humor and intelligence. These relationships require nothing from me except my authentic self, and they offer me the same in return. I spent decades believing that love required sacrifice and financial support, that being a good mother meant preventing my child from experiencing any hardship or consequence. I now understand that real love sometimes requires boundaries, that genuine relationships must be built on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. My final message to anyone who might be experiencing similar manipulation is, this real love never demands you prove it with money. When someone truly cares about you, your presence is the gift, not your bank account. Trust your instincts when relationships feel transactional or when people only express affection in connection with financial requests. I learned that it's never too late to reclaim your life from people who exploit your generosity. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary for your survival and dignity. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their worst behavior and allow them to face the natural consequences of their choices. Today I'm teaching literacy to a group of enthusiastic adult learners, planning a weekend trip to St. Petersburg with Harold, and living a life filled with genuine relationships and meaningful purpose. I lost a son to greed and moral bankruptcy, but I gained my freedom, my self-respect, and a future filled with authentic love and appreciation. The betrayal nearly destroyed me, but ultimately it led to the richest and most fulfilling chapter of my life. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can become the catalyst for discovering who you really are and what you truly deserve. That's a lesson worth every dollar it cost me to learn. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where your generosity was taken for granted, or where you felt like you had to prove your worth through financial support? How did you recognize the warning signs, and what steps did you take to protect yourself? Your experiences could help someone else who might be facing similar manipulation. Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, I'd be grateful if you'd hit that like button to help others find it. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about resilience, justice, and finding strength in unexpected places. And please share this with anyone who might benefit from hearing about the warning signs of financial abuse. Together, we can help protect our communities from these devastating betrayals. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you all relationships filled with genuine love, respect, and appreciation for who you are, not what you can provide.